Is it possible that there is one main thing creating all of the suffering in the world? I want to address that question in this video. And I have some illustrations for you that I hope will paint a picture, because I think it's one thing to hear the words, to hear the ideas, to have the concepts. But when we can also have a picture of what things look like, it can really help us. The one thing that I want to share here is the idea of what I call soul sickness. I believe human beings are suffering from a massive illness of soul, a lack of connection to soul, a deep pain in the soul. And I want to speak a bit about what is soul sickness, how do we become ill with soul sickness, and of course, what I believe is a really great start to truly healing the soul sickness for good. So I'm going to share my screen here and share with you a few slides that I think will be fun to take a look at here. So what is soul sickness? We need to define it, right? It's defined as a feeling of bereavement or a feeling of being deprived of something or someone. Now, certainly in these very challenging, very separated times that we're living in, we can feel deprived a lot of some things or someone's, right? But I think there's also something even deeper than before we hit pandemic times or some of the other challenges that has been going on for millennia. That is a sense of feeling lost. I have that as the bottom bullet there, feeling lost or aimless, or this nagging dissatisfaction, a sense of emptiness, or a longing for meaning and purpose. This is common amongst all human beings. And if we don't address it, this becomes the soul sickness. It's like something that just completely nags at us or sits with us and won't leave us alone. Okay. So how does the soul become ill? Some of you have seen me talk about these 4 stages that my work is very much focused on, this idea of remembering who we are. Who am I? What do I have to offer? And this is where we activate our will forces and we say, I'm willing to figure this out. I'm willing to take this journey. I'm willing to take this step forward to do this. And then we move into this idea of reconnecting. What matters? What do I really want and care about in this world? Most of us, especially women, really struggle to name this. They can name a lot of things they don't want, but they struggle to name, what do they want and where am I needed? This is also about emotional mastery. We start to learn not to take things personally, not to go so deep into things, but to really step back and stand in our own values unapologetically and say, these are my values. This is what I care about. And this is how my life is going to unfold in alignment with these values. And then the re-envisioning, this idea of taking what we've remembered about ourselves and who we are and what our values are and what we care about and what is ours to do in the world where we're needed. And we start to say, okay, how can I take that and really be me? Envision a life for myself and a world for myself in which I get to be me and I can make a difference sharing my gifts. And we know with clarity, we have clear thought in this realm of what that looks like. We begin to really see clearly what that looks like. And when we have all 3 of those things coming together, only then can we find that middle intersection of the 3 where we are rebirthing. Our soul is becoming fulfilled. We have what I call coherence between our will, what we're doing, the emotions, what we're feeling, and then our thoughts, what we're thinking. They come together in this space where everything feels aligned. We feel like we're truly stepping into who we are and living the life that we're meant to live. But how do we become ill? Okay, if these are the pieces, then ultimately what causes the illness, in my view, in my work, in my research, when we stop remembering who we are, when we're not paying attention to who we are, we become disempowered. We start people pleasing. We have no sense of self, right? And that's because we're not really even knowing who we are separate from others, or I shouldn't even say separate, because separation in itself is somewhat of an illusion. And yet we are unique individuals and we need to acknowledge that. We need to remember that, right? And if we stop reconnecting to our values, we forget what we want or what we care about, We become overwhelmed with all of the options, all of the things to do, all of the shoulds, and the ways in which we feel like we have to measure up to expectations. We become disconnected. We start to feel lost with no sense of purpose or meaning. That disconnection is huge in starting to cause us to lose sight of ourselves. And then, of course, if we don't envision, if we don't have a clear vision or clear thought about our future and what's possible and where we're needed and how we can show up and be ourselves, we end up feeling very empty. We have a lack of belonging. We have no sense of place. We feel like we're kind of adrift at sea with nowhere to go, right? And when all of those things are going on, when any of those things are going on, it may be really difficult to rebirth and find coherence when any of those pieces are missing. But certainly when all of them are missing, there's almost no way we can rebirth or find that soul fulfillment or that coherence that we want so badly. And so we end up with this very empty space, this gray area, as I call it. And there's a gold nugget inside, right? There's this gold in the middle, but we can't access it because that gray is in the middle and it looks like a triangle. We have this triangle here. And what I started to see in my research is that this is the classic triangle that we often hear about in psychology. And when we are disempowered and people pleasing and have no sense of self, we want to become the rescuer, the savior. This is excess people pleasing, having us wanting to fix and save everyone, often at our own expense. We aren't remembering who we are in this situation. Or if we're completely overwhelmed, feeling lost, no sense of purpose, no sense of meaning, we become the victim. We feel like we have nothing to live for. We feel hopeless. We feel trapped. We feel like life is happening to us instead of for us. And this just keeps us stuck in wanting to blame everyone else, blame life, blame everything. And we don't see any other possibilities. And of course, when we can't see other possibilities, that lack of vision that caused our emptiness and lack of belonging, it ends up making us feel really resentful, really angry. And that can cause us to want others to not be so happy either. If we see other people feeling joyful or belonging, we get jealous, we get upset. This is human nature. We don't know what to do with it. We want what they have, or we feel resentful or frustrated, or even just plain old resigned. And even resignation or emotional unavailability. These are ways we can perpetrate. We can create a rift and a divide in our lives, right? And this triangle, some of you may recognize this victim, perpetrator, rescuer. This is the classic codependency triangle. Now, in psychology, codependency is considered this idea that almost in order to maintain these roles in our lives, and we often, almost always really, fluctuate between them. You know, if we're the victim one moment, then we can become angry and resentful and start taking our frustration and our blame out on other people. And then maybe in another moment, we feel bad about that. We feel guilty. So we want to fix everything and we want to make everything better. And we feel like, well, if I'm a victim, maybe I can at least save everybody else because I can't save myself. So there's all these different pieces. Or maybe we've been a perpetrator, and this is common in abusive relationships. And we often don't understand why people don't leave their abusers, or why people, codependency is at the heart of addiction, no matter the addiction. And we are all addicted in this culture. We are all looking to fill the void and figure out whether it's social media, shopping, drugs, alcohol, food. There's so many, even addiction to sex and the concept of needing the relationship, like not wanting it for companionship, for the ability to be initiated by our relationships and grow, but actually feeling like we can't even figure out who we are without someone else defining it. That's what codependency is all about. And this is rampant. And I truly believe this is at the heart of soul sickness, because we are not allowing ourselves to remember who we are, reconnect to what matters, and re-envision new possibilities for ourselves. And we get stuck in the gray area. And this triangle, if you notice, is a top-down triangle. I believe this is the way in which patriarchal dominance culture perpetuates, the way in which the feminine is suppressed, but also every marginalized community out there. It's been going on since the beginning of time. If it wasn't racism specifically in the US, whites were fighting whites way back in European countries, long before we started making it about race and divide and, indigenous culture versus the new people or whatever it was. We can call it anything we want, but there are deeper roots. And I believe this is at the heart of it that we have got to start looking at. So how do we become free and healthy? Well, we've got to bring these pieces back. We've got to bring this concept back. And when we have these triangles, we start to bring back our remembering. Then the disempowerment, people pleasing, no sense of self, it disappears. And the rescuer now becomes more of a beacon. We're able to remember who we are and stand in that. And that doesn't need to do anything. We just need to be it, be that beacon, show up as our true self with all of our understanding of who we really are, with no apologies for being who we are. And that in itself begins to radiate out as a light or a guide or maybe a coach or a mentor for others. Then we can bring in the reconnecting piece. And when that happens, we stop feeling so overwhelmed. We start to know what our values are. We don't feel so disconnected. We know why we're doing what we're doing. We know where we're needed in the world. And the victim now has the opportunity to become a creator. We're able to reconnect to what's important, align with it, and create from that place. We are all here to be creators on this planet. I believe that wholeheartedly. We have so much wisdom and so many gifts to be shared, but we get stuck in this other triangle. So then when we bring back the re-envisioning, now we have a vision for our lives. We see a place in the world. We can connect to our place in the world. And we don't have that in the way anymore. And the perpetrator can now become the challenger. And the challenger is someone who says, I can see more. I can see something different for my life, for the world. And maybe that's when we challenge the status quo. We try new things. We take risks. We challenge when someone has a blanket statement that all people of such and such, race, religion, culture, whatever, are this way, right? We challenge those ideas and those thoughts. Instead of feeling like a perpetrator where we have to attack them, we now start to just challenge what's going on and see things from a much broader perspective. And when we can do that, that's when the rebirthing is possible again. That's when we can start to become our full selves. This is where wellness of soul can create an entirely new future. And if you notice, there's a whole new triangle in here. This is this triangle around the rebirth. That's a reverse triangle. Now it's from the bottom up. Now we're lifting ourselves up to something bigger. We're balancing out. We didn't take away the part of the triangle that's top down, patriarchal dominance, all this kind of thing. What we did is we lobbed off the excess because there's too much of it, right? We lobbed off the gray area by bringing back these components of ourselves. And we acknowledge that there's a whole other aspect that can balance that intense masculine with a proper balance of feminine and reduce the intensity and the out of balance, unhealthy masculine, bring in a beautiful, healthy feminine that remembers, reconnects, re-envisions so that we really can rebirth in a more harmonious way. This is how we start creating wellness. And we can have many different practices. There are many different practices. We have to work those stages. We have to go through the process of remembering, reconnecting, re-envisioning. We can't ignore those. We need to live in the questions, no matter how uncomfortable they are. We need to be meeting the challenges, the extremes, the shadows, the dragons, all the things we don't tend to want to look at. That's the only way we're really going to clear away the fog and be able to see what's real about ourselves, about others, and about the world. We have to stop ignoring and instead start gathering the fragmented parts of ourselves. When we are pushed aside out of this patriarchal dominance culture, when we are told we're not enough, when we are told we don't measure up, we start to believe it, or we start to push aside parts of ourselves that were criticized when we were young, different aspects of our being that we started to think aren't valuable, aren't worthy. And we do that all the time. We need to honor and connect to the rhythms of nature. We are part of nature. Mother Nature is doing everything she can right now to bring balance and harmony back to the world. And it's not fun. It's very intense. People are hurting. People are suffering. It's a challenge. And I also believe strongly it's a wake-up call. It's an opportunity for us to step into something different and start paying attention to what we've been ignoring. Many of you know I also use journaling. I have my Sacred Nights of Winter journal every year. Journaling as a holistic path to come home to ourselves. we can tune in. I talk a lot more about journaling through my courses and my trainings and the journaling, but that's such a powerful way to practice creating wellness and to really connect with ourselves. And finally, we can absolutely connect in community with others on the path. This is really, really important. This is a very difficult journey, this path to creating wellness, to moving beyond the soul sickness. And I don't believe we can do it alone. Each of us has our own unique path that we must travel alone, but we don't have to go through the traveling by ourselves. We can connect with others in community to support us. And that is also my biggest program that does that, is called Solace. You can access it at kimmariecoaching.com/solace. I would love to hear any comments you have on this video, on what I've shared. I really feel that this is a huge opportunity for all of us to clear away that top-down triangle that I feel perpetuates everything. It's perpetuating the divisiveness, the illness, Mother Earth's reactivity because we're not paying attention, whatever it is. And the more that we can pay more attention and really connect in these beautiful ways, the more joy we can create in the world, the more joy we can create for ourselves, the more we can truly have that soul fulfillment that we're looking for.